Are you wanting to meet with other senior executives in the data and analytics space? In an environment that is created for connection? Wanting to meet with other senior executives in the data and analytics space? In an environment that is created for connection and inspiration? Then why not join one of our in-person conferences? We have events all over the world, and you can find out the ones closest to you by visiting cariniumintelligence.com/events.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's Leading Female Exec panel. We're having a few technical difficulties, which is how you can tell that we are, in fact, live with you today. And what a great discussion that we are going to have here, all about the hype. And more specifically, don't be intimidated by the hype. This is something that so many leaders are coming with me and chatting about, most recently, talking about the buzzwords that are coming up at conferences, in content, and in the workplace as well. And really what the result is for having those buzzwords fly around. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper in today. And as I mentioned there, we are live. So if you have questions for our wonderful panelists today, please do pop those in the comment section. We would love to be able to involve you in this live stream for the next 25 minutes or so. But that's enough from me. Let's have this wonderful panel up on stage today. Some familiar faces, some brand new faces, and some faces we haven't seen for a while. So I'm so glad to see you all join us here today. So joining me up on stage is a lovely selection of fantastic leaders here. What I'm going to ask you to do is each, if you wouldn't mind, introducing yourselves, but then also telling me what is the biggest hype that you're currently hearing lots about, and do you think it's as important as the hype is leading us to believe? Amy, I'll go to you first for an intro, please.
Hi, Catherine. I'm Amy Gershkoff Bowles. I am the Global Head of Digital Strategy and Emerging Technology at Levi Strauss & Company. And one of the biggest hype items that I'm hearing about is AI. And I'm actually a big believer in AI and its transformational impact that it can have on businesses and on customer experiences. But part of the reason I think it's so much hype is because you actually don't need to use AI for everything. There's plenty of great insights that you can derive from smart analysis of clean, well-maintained data. And so I think you've got to balance hype with reality when it comes to AI and leverage it just where it will make the most difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's going to be a theme we hear a lot today. Amy, thank you so much for joining us. Maritza, great to see you. How about you? What's the hype you're hearing lots about?
Hello, everyone. I'm Maritza. I am the Head of Data at BNP Paribas Personal Finance South Africa, and we trade as RCS Group here in South Africa. So if you look at the trends in the data analytics industry for 2022, the number one trend is new approaches to data architectures or the modern data stack. So specifically data mesh, data fabric, data lakehouse, etc. And if you read about these new approaches in, white papers and in the media, it's as a data leader and you're halfway through your data strategy roadmap, you get a bit nervous because you've just started building your enterprise data lake and all of a sudden there's all of these new things. Whether these are just hype or here to stay, we'll have to see. But I do think that the drivers for these trends are definitely here to stay, and that is making our delivery cycle shorter and trying to find a way to make data management in an increasingly complex environment a little simpler. So I think those are here to stay. And if you're already doing something to address those challenges, then don't get nervous about the hype.
Amazing, Maritza. Great advice as always. Minna, I'll come over to you. What's the hype you're hearing about?
Thanks, Catherine. So my name is Minna. I'm a data strategy lead and a data strategy consultant at Solita. I have to say that I have to build on top of what the earlier ladies said, because AI definitely is hype still. And I think from that point of view, the challenge is that if you don't focus enough on governing your data, just using AI is not going to get you very far. And then related to that, also what Maritza described, the other hype that I'm seeing more and more now is data mesh. I think that data mesh is it can be a hype if it's considered more like a technology, or it's again something that you plug into a product and then try to sell that with data mesh. But instead, it should be considered as a new approach to manage and govern your data in a more sustainable, more scalable manner, so that you really build data products and you put the ownership of data product and data governance closer to the business context that where it's created and used.
Absolutely. Data mesh has been something that we've been speaking about quite a lot here at Business of Data, really kind of diving into what it is. And in actual fact, we have an upcoming podcast which really does dive into it. And I must admit, after chatting with that guest, it really does show that perhaps sometimes these are almost wolf in sheep's clothing, in the fact that they are something that we already know what they are really. It's just a new term or new way of describing it to before. Amazing. Wendy, welcome to the group again. Great to see you. What's the hype that you're hearing lots about?
I would build on Maritza's comment around data architecture. I think that one in particular for me has been front and center. And the data fabric is something that we've been looking into. And I've started seeing it more and more at conferences and presentations. And it's not that the fabric isn't a good architecture or a good technology. I think that it's only applicable for some companies, for some business cases, for some use cases. And that tends to be what we see with the hype, was mentioned by Minna on AI as well, it works if that's the challenge, the problem that you're trying to solve. If that's not the problem that you have that you're trying to solve, it's easy to get enamored with the solution instead of the problem. But I think data fabrics too open the door for challenges that a lot of companies have with data governance, where the further move toward democratization of data, which is a lovely thing, but if you don't have good governance and good standards and processes, can be a downfall.
100%. Thank you, Wendy. Kehlani, welcome to the group for the first time. It's great to have you part of this panel. Please give us an introduction to yourself, and then what is the hype that you're hearing a lot about?
Thank you so much, Catherine. So good evening to everyone in South Africa. So I'm Guillaine de Coty, currently looking after, I'm the head of data and data governance for Standard Bank in the credit business. The hype that I'm really hearing where I'm at, it's this migration to the cloud. Where for me, from a data storage perspective, we've always had the data warehouse. Then we moved to the data lake where we've got structured, semi-structured data and the likes. And now we're moving into the cloud. And now, as much as we've got Snowflake, we've got AWS, we've got Azure, there's benefits for cloud where they can be cost saving, the security purposes. But where we add from a business perspective and what we're finding with all the hype is that there's also the business decisions that then needs to be made. The moment where we say the hype says you need to go to the cloud, but the reality is business ready to go to the cloud? And then which then goes back to the question of the business strategy or the organizational strategy that we have in place. Is it then being pushed by the hype, or we're then saying from a business strategy and the strategic objectives that we have, we're saying as a business, we'll make sure that the hype, we use it to enable our business strategy. So there's those that are currently coming up, and there's multiple questions that comes with migrating the data to the cloud, in saying, do we have the right security? Do we have, where is the data going to be stored? The cross-border implications, the regulatory impact. And these are the things that we're starting to unearth in the business strategies that we're currently having, in saying whether or not should we follow the hype of going to the cloud, or do we then stick to the guns on saying this is the business strategy that we have, and then we're going to use the hype to enable?
Absolutely love that, Kehlani. Thank you so much. And then last but certainly not least, Besa, great to see you. Quick intro and then your take on the hype that you're hearing.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Bauta. I'm the Chief Data Analytics Officer for Texas Department of Protective and Family Services. So I have some new terms or old terms, depending on your audience. What I'm hearing a lot now is synthetic data or synthetic patients, and I'll explain what that is. Obviously, with Gartner, sort of introducing the whole new term of hyperautomation as well as digital twins. So there's a lot of new terms out there, but if you look, it's pretty much, old processes with, shiny new coats.
I love that, shiny new coats. What a great description. Thank you, Besa. Amazing. So we only have a short time here today, as is the name of the game, to try and keep it concise for our fantastic audience. So do be sure to get those questions in. I can see we've got a few people logging in via YouTube today. So thank you so much for joining us there. Now, this group is always an incredibly honest group. I always get messages saying that people appreciate the candid nature in which our panelists join. So I feel confident in asking this question, receiving some honest answers back, which is, have you made past decisions based on the pressure of hype? If you have, why? If you haven't, why? Because I feel like we all, in all of our industries, there will be this pressure of following the latest thing, and there can be that pressure to do it, quite quickly without perhaps considering the implications of doing so. So I just want to kind of delve into that a little bit for your personal experiences of either why you felt that pressure and then gone for it, or pushed back against that pressure. Amy, I'll come to you first on that.
Yeah, I think when it comes to a lot of the hype in different areas of technology and data, it's really important to actually not get swept up into the hype and to be true to both your and your company's own leadership and values. And I'll give you an example is if you look at today's talent market, the talent market for data and technical talent is very hot, as I'm sure all of you know and are experiencing. And the way a lot of companies are responding to this is with a sort of arms race of perks, right? And they're trying to give employees different kinds of perks. But really the research shows that what most employees want is to be paid fairly and equitably, to have a path for growth, development, and advancement, and to work at a company that really shares their values. And so companies like Levi Strauss, I think, are very well positioned in this talent market because we have long been at the forefront of talking about values-driven commerce and sustainability and other sort of values-based approaches to leadership within the company, and have invested a lot in upskilling programs for our employees and really invested in their growth and development. So I think while it is important to pay attention to the market and listen to the hype, I think it's always important to be true to your company's values and stay the course on those, especially if you're seeing that deliver strong results as we have.
I love that, Amy. Such a unique take in this discussion, actually, regarding hype. And I've seen some really fantastic TikToks where people have rebutted, kind of, you see the job advertisements of saying, we've got a pool table in the office, and people reply saying, well, really, we just want fair pay. You can keep your pool table. We'd just like a decent salary, please. And it's quite interesting, this pushback against that type of thing. So yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Amy. Maritza, how about you? I know you always have a fantastic story to share on these monthly panels. When it comes to your past, have you felt the pressure into a certain hype, and did you concede to that pressure?
The answer is yes. So very early in my BI management career, many years ago, I was pressured into implementing a real-time BI solution. And this is before cloud, before data streaming technology. We had to code this whole real-time BI situation. It was not trivial. It took months and months and months to do it. And what we found out, or let me say we implemented it, and the adoption was really low. And what we realized was that, firstly, the end users were not ready to use a real-time solution. In fact, they couldn't make decisions in real time. So there wasn't a very strong use case. And also, even worse, the data wasn't captured in real time. So we couldn't report on it in real time. So many lessons learned. I can't even begin to say how many, but the most important one, and one that I absolutely stick to my guns with, is that your data strategy is not based on technology. It's based on the competencies that you want to build for your organization. And those competencies are linked to the problems you want to solve and the opportunities you want to unlock. And that is really the only way to not go down that rabbit hole of hype. So if there is a new trend and it aligns to something on your strategy, you will be able to enable that competency. I think Wendy talked about enablement, then absolutely do it. But otherwise, stick to the blueprint that is your data strategy.
I love that, Maritza. Thank you so much for sharing as always. And I think it's really interesting, actually, as you say, it's the case of sometimes it can be windswept by the technology element, and especially if it's something shiny and new, it can be very exciting to us. But as you say, just grounding it in what the reason is behind implementing it. Minna, I'm keen to come to you, especially on this, given that in your role, I suppose there is this risk that you could be brought in to initiate a hype in organizations, and how actually perhaps sometimes you have to push back potentially against why someone might be partnering with you, I guess. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we are definitely working a lot on that. A lot of companies want to become data driven, but then when we ask a couple of questions like, so what does that look like? What will that change? They don't really have an idea. So we need to kind of start from the scratch and push back and try to make them understand that it's not the data driven that is the goal. It is something that you do for your organization. You change something to become something that is on your business strategy. So definitely we need to make, and I think that's part of the working with hype as well, that you need to translate those hype terms into something understandable and tangible in that business context that your counterparts or your colleagues are, and kind of explain to them what could this mean in your environment, in your industry, for you and for your organization, and then decide whether it's something that is worth focusing on or investing in or not.
I love that. So almost like an extension of data literacy, where you're breaking down those terms and really having that moment to make sure everyone's on the same page with it, as well as we know. I'm sure I could set you all off on writing a task of defining a certain hype word, and we might get very different definitions back just from this group. So in an organization, it's important to do as well. Thank you, Minna. Wendy, when it comes to your organization, quite a unique organization compared to the ones on the panel here as well, how does that lean in for you in terms of your past experiences, in terms of trying to either feel that pressure of the hype and leaning into it, or leaning against it?
Yes, and apologies, I forgot to introduce myself the first round. I'm Wendy Gilbert. I'm Deputy Director for Enterprise Business Intelligence at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I'm based here in Seattle, Washington. And I thought I totally agree with everything the other panelists have mentioned, but one other area that we have pressure when it comes to the hype is in hiring and finding good candidates. A lot of times the candidates that we see are really interested in, they hear these terms, and when they come into an organization, they're expecting you to be able to help them with these more modern technologies or to offer them those opportunities, which is great. But if the roles that you have available don't factor in those modern technologies, then that could be a challenge, I think, in just attracting the talent that you want. If every person graduating from university wants big data and data science and AI, then how do you ask them to work on little data and non-AI areas? I think another area too where the pressure has come in is for me personally, where I've been in roles in the past where I didn't feel that my personal skill set I felt like my personal skill set was getting behind, because you hear so much of the hype, you hear so much of the things that you think you're supposed to know. And I've actually left companies in the past where I felt my skill sets were getting too stale, and then realized that maybe the rest of the world doesn't have this either. So I think it's something to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a great context, actually, Wendy, to kind of put yourself in. The grass isn't always greener, right? And the sense of you can see, especially LinkedIn is rife for it, where you see all these statuses about implementing the latest and greatest. But actually, if you were to dig down into it, it may be only a very specific project or a case study. It's not actually as big as perhaps it can seem. And that actually we're probably more on a level playing field than maybe we would like to admit for certain. So yeah, I love that wider context. Just popping here, I can see the comment section is going crazy here. Helenke saying business requirements and strategy playing a crucial role for having to make decisions to adopt the hype or not in their organization. Others saying they agree with Maritza. Always loved that. Amazing. So we're coming rapidly towards the end. This has felt like the quickest panel ever. We might have to overrun by a few minutes here. But Kalani, I wanted to come back on something you said earlier about harnessing the hype and using it to your advantage. And I wonder if I could pivot the conversation slightly to delve into that a little bit further and how you have experienced harnessing when people are excited about something and running with it and using it as an enablement.
Yeah. So in my case, we've had the experience where business then came in and saying, this is the new hype. What I've always brought back the business is always saying, what is the business strategy? What are those strategic objectives that we then needing to meet? Because it gets to a point where there's always going to be the latest and greatest, but from a strategy perspective, if it's not where the organization is going, do you really want to spend time and effort on the next shiny thing that we currently have? So it's always been very clear when we deal with business saying, what are those clear business strategic objectives that we have? And then once we have that clear definition of those strategic objectives that we want to meet, then coming in and saying, how do we then allow the hype to then dictate how do we get to enable the work that we currently want to come alive, right? So in those strategic objectives, just clearly stating on what is the hype that we want to enable. And then lastly, from a leadership perspective, as a leader, there will always be that ownership, accountability, and always being very clear on what decisions am I taking with this hype. What are the benefits? Because you find most of the times we go with the hype, we don't take into account what are the potential risk exposures that we're exposing ourselves into. Also from the benefits, does everybody have a clear understanding what those benefits are? And like one of the ladies also just highlighted here, do we fully understand the business value that we're then going to unlock with this hype and harnessing what we currently have with our strategic objectives?
Amazing, Kalani. Thank you so much for that. Absolutely, couldn't agree further. Besa, I'm keen. I love the fact that we've kind of come to you to round this discussion off in some ways, because again, your organization representing a very different sector, and it being potentially a different game here when it comes to hype and the finances and budget surrounding that being probably even more crucial. What's your thoughts here?
I think all of us have sort of jumped on some sort of hype bandwagon. I'm just thinking, like, as far as the latest fashion trend. I mean, looking at my past, I probably have some horrible fashion trends in my past. Same thing with hype. When I was thinking as far as hyper automation in 2020, when, one of these companies came out and said, this is the latest, greatest thing as far as the, best strategic thing you could have in business technology. So of course I jumped on the bandwagon. Who else couldn't? I wanted to hyper automate everything, as far as robotic process automation. Even my, if I could automate my coffee making, I would have done that too. But I agree with the panel that, was I achieving an operational goal or a business goal? And really, thinking about all the resources that got plunked into that project, what was the ROI, regarding moving down that pathway? I think everyone has to do a calculus and really think about, any sort of new project is going to take time, energy, and resources. And can those resources be leveraged, kind of stand up, your current projects rather than chasing the hype or chasing the latest, greatest thing?
I love that. And I actually love the comparison there to fashion trends, because I think you're totally right. We can all look back on probably our teenage years and we're like, yep, that was a decision we made at the time. But at the time you thought it was fantastic. It was the latest thing. It was going to last forever. And I think it's okay. You have to be okay with that stage and say, right then it was okay. And I think this is an increasing conversation that I'm hearing, especially when it comes to partnerships and solutions, that it's okay to admit that you've outgrown something or it's not kind of working anymore because things have moved on as well. And I think that comparison to kind of fashion and trends like that is such a great one for sure. We have unfortunately run out of time for this week, but I do think this is a discussion that we can certainly keep going. And I am excited to say to the audience that our leading female exec panel will be doing more content creation than ever before in the coming months. So you're going to see articles and blog posts appear from them. So hopefully this might give some inspiration to a couple of them to write a few things down. But thank you for your comments. We've enjoyed reading them as we've gone along, and any questions we will follow up with very, very soon. But But for now, thank you all so much. And we will be back next month for sure.
Wanting to meet with other senior executives in the data and analytics space? In an environment that is created for connection and inspiration? Then why not join one of our in-person conferences? We have events all over the world, and you can find out the ones closest to you by visiting cariniumintelligence.com/events.